I'm so happy to have you here, Julie Ryan. I had the pleasure of being on your podcast earlier this year, and we had a lot of fun. And I just really wanted to know so much more about you. They're just the little tidbits that I learned. I love to hear people's spiritual origin story. Like, because, we're doing these crazy things, and I love that I have two psychic mediums here today. And what I know a little bit about your story is it's very different from Nicole Parish's story. And I love that we have this variety. So if you don't mind kind of telling us, how did you get into this wild and crazy work?
Well, I'm a businesswoman and an inventor who learned how to do woo-woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. How's that for an elevator pitch? I learned how to do all this stuff. I didn't have dead people chasing me as a child, or if I did, I would have known what to do with that. And now I teach people all over the world how to do what I do. And what I learned is that once we connect with spirit, we can do it all. I don't understand in the woo-woo community. Well, you got the mediums and the psychics and the NDEers and the pet psychics and the healers. And it's like you connect with spirit, you do it all. So I do that with clients from all over the world. I have a call-in show, Ask Julie Ryan, every Thursday night. It was last night. People call in from all over, and we had calls from Egypt and oh gosh, I can't even tell you where, all over America, North America, and abroad. And we can talk to your dead grandma. I can scan you energetically. I'm like a human MRI. We can scan your pet. We can do past lives. We can talk to your angels and guides. We can tell how close to death somebody is. It's just all part of the buffet of psychicness, which makes it really fun.
That's such a fun term, buffet of psychicness. But I'm wondering, so was there something that sort of made you want to move in this direction versus you're very talented businesswoman and inventor? You could have just, stayed along that path. What
Yeah.
kind of pushed you to decide that you wanted to use your talents and grow and develop in this spiritual way?
I have a girlfriend who gave me a book a little more than 30 years ago called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace.
Mm.
And she called herself a medical intuitive. And I thought, well, what the heck is that? I'd never heard that term before. And I had always been in the medical supply business. I'm an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world and former manufacturer of them. So I was always interested in healing, but I was helping surgeons and medical providers help their patients in the hospital setting. And I wanted to know more. And back then, we didn't have the internet yet. So I did the old fashioned thing and I went to a bookstore because I thought they're likely to have more on this woo woo stuff than even my local library. And I found a book there called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. And she's deceased now, retired NASA physicist who parlayed very complex quantum physics principles into understandable languaging for the non-scientific mind. That would be me. And she was using energy to help facilitate healing. And I wanted to know more. So I called her school and I said, you guys got anybody teaching this stuff in my area? And lo and behold, they did. And so I studied with that woman, my mentor. Her name's Susan, for 6 years. Now, fast forward, I teach everybody how to do what I do in a weekend. And that's really how it came about. And then people would say to me, why are you doing this? And I'd say, I don't know. And they'd say, what are you going to do with it? I'd say, no clue. It's just interesting. Fast forward 25 years, and then I was led to write my first book, and it's all developed from there. That's a fun story, too, if you want me to share that.
Yeah.
Angelic Attendants, what happens as we transition from this life into the next. My mother was dying in 2002, and I'd never been around anybody who was at the end of their life before. And my siblings and my dad and all the spouses were there and the grandkids. And I was with her and I felt like the Lady of Justice statue, the balance, because on one side my heart was breaking because my mother was dying unexpectedly. On the other side, I'm seeing all this glorious spiritual stuff going on. And I thought, whoa, what is this stuff? And we can go into that later if you want. So, fast forward a couple of years later, and I was with my mentor, Susan, and she was doing a healing on me. And when I'm having a healing done on me, all my deceased loved ones' spirits are in the room and they participate. Even my dog, Katie, she's on her hind legs and her little paws are on the table and she's participating. So one day, the spirit of this dead Pope shows up. And he's got his Pope hat on and the shepherd's rod and the whole 9 yards. And I said, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Clement. And I said, oh, I went through 12 years at Catholic schools, but I never heard of a Pope Clement. I'm so sorry. And he laughed and he said, well, I was number 6. And I said, okay, great. How may I help you? And he said, well, you're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies because everybody's so afraid and it's been so bastardized over the millennia. And you know the truth from the spiritual sides. You just need to get on with it. And I said, thanks so much for stopping by. But you see, I'm a businesswoman. And if I did that, people would think I was nuts. So I'm not interested. But thanks so much. Have a nice day. And he laughed and he said, yeah, 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 yeah. Everything that you've done in your career. And I've founded 9 companies in 5 industries. So he's going, everything you've done in your career has led you to this. I was not seeing the correlation at the time. And I said, well, thanks again, but no thanks. I go to leave a little while later and I'm in my car. And just for kicks, I did an internet search on my phone of Pope Clement VI. Come to find out, this guy was in office during the Black Plague when 2/3 of Europe died. And he's best known for his prayers for the dead and his prayers for the dying. And I'm thinking, Ryan, you can't make that up.
Mhm.
And so that's really what got me to the point of, and then 2 other quick stories. May I add on to that?
Of course.
Yes. A couple years later, I kind of wrote a little outline of the book and I'm like, yeah, 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 I'll get to it. So I'm in church and the priest from the pulpit says, wouldn't it be nice if somebody could tell us if really our angels and our loved ones greet us and lead us into paradise, lead us to heaven? And I'm getting elbowed from my husband and my son. I'm sitting between them. And I'm thinking, really, God, from the pulpit? You're giving me grief about this? Okay, okay, okay. Write the book, put up AskJulieRyan.com. And I'm thinking, I hope this doesn't hurt my businesses because I'm coming out of the closet on this. So a couple weeks after I AskJulieRyan.com went up, I'm at a conference and it's all C-suite executives. I'm giving a talk, mostly men in the audience. And afterwards, this guy comes up to me with his iPad open and it's on AskJulieRyan.com. And I'm thinking, oh, here we go. And he said, is this you? And I said, why, yes, there's my picture. I'm thinking, there's my picture on the website. And he said, I'm really interested in knowing more. Can we sit together at lunch? And I'm smiling. And I said, sure. And in my head, I'm thinking, great, I can get pummeled for an hour during lunch from this guy. So we sit at a table of 8 at 7 C-suite executive men and me. All they wanted to talk about was woo-woo. Not one mention of the conference, not one mention of my talk, not one mention of the businesses they were all in. It was all woo-woo. I said, okay, I'm in. All right. That's the sign I needed. So that's what happened. It was a progression, as I think most of us go through.
I love hearing that. I was thinking about, you mentioned your husband, your son early on when you first came to them and said, hey, I want to take Barbara Brennan's Hands of Light, or I'm experiencing these things. How was that for the people around you in your inner circle?
My husband he didn't understand it. He was interested in it. My son was too little. He didn't know any differently. And he and all of his friends, they're now in their early to mid 30s. They still call me, Miss Julie, my throat hurts. Do I need to go to the doctor? Because I was scanning them their whole lives. So they were around it their whole lives. So they didn't know any differently. But the thing that really got my husband was he had a bone spur on his foot. And I said, well, let me take a look at it. And so I did. And I'm like a human MRI. I can see inside people's bodies with their permission. And so I worked on the bone spur and I said, "You had plantar warts." And he said, "No, I don't have them." And I said, "No, but you did at some point." And he said, "I was 10 when those things were burned off. There is no way." And there was no scar. I could see him energetically. He said, "There's no way you would have known that." And I said, "Well, I can see him." And he was like, "Okay, do I need to find the door now?" And then my extended family, my parents, no, they just thought I was kind of kooky, didn't understand it until I nailed stuff about them, primarily medical stuff. And then the last one to come on board was my older brother, Jay. And I'd been doing this stuff for probably more than a dozen years at that point. And he called me one evening and he said his friend had had a stroke and they had him in surgery and they were removing part of his skull because his brain was swelling. And he called and he said, "Do your thing." I said, "All right, I'll do my thing." So I scanned him, did a healing on him. And his friend gave me a message to give to the friend's dad. And they were all in the waiting room outside of the operating room during the surgery. So Jay gave the message to the dad, and the dad sat down and he said, "There is no way you could have known that because only Tim, my son, and I know that information." And so that really convinced my brother Jay. And so I think they know it's real, but they don't really ask many questions, but they'll come to me at times if they need things, but there's still a little like, "I don't really get it. I don't really know what she's doing." But yeah, great question. Thanks.
How has it been? Because I've seen over these years how much the collective has opened and the perspective has shifted towards a lot of these woo-woo things. And so, I mean, you had a lot of courage to sort of come out of your spiritual closet early on. Like, yeah, how has it been for you? Would you agree with that? That over these years, there's a lot more openness and acceptance of these kind of woo-woo topics. How have you experienced that?
Absolutely. I think it's becoming part of the zeitgeist where people are looking for the spiritual component, not just religion and doing what they're told to do through certain religions. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the people that were opposed to this are dying off. And the younger people just, they haven't been inundated with the fire and brimstone and all of that. And really, when you look back throughout history, the healers have always been there. Those were the women that were burned at the stake as witches. Those were the healers that were doing that. And it was well educated, wealthy men that were doing that because they wanted to get the allopathic medical model in there. And they didn't want people being healers, they wanted to make it all one model. And I believe it's really changing. Every once in a while, throughout my time doing this, I'd have somebody say, "Well, that's evil," or "You're talking to the devil if you're talking to spirits and all that." And first of all, I'll say, "Well, okay, I understand that, but do you pray?" And they'll say, "Of course I pray." I'll say, "Great. To whom are you praying?" "Jesus, the saint, whomever." I say, "Okay, great. Are your prayers answered?" "Yeah, all the time." And I'll say, "Well, when you're talking to Jesus, are you sitting on your couch and Jesus is sitting next to you and you're holding his hand while you're talking to him and he's giving you the answers?" And they say, "No." I say, "Oh, you're talking to his spirit." And you can just see it connect in their heads. And they say, "Well, I never thought of it that way." I said, "It's as natural as, breathing." And it's been in every culture and it's in every holy text. The Bible's full of the angel appeared to Mary. Moses was talking to a burning bush. He was told to do this. Saul, became Paul. There was a voice that talked to him. I mean, it's throughout not just the Bible, but all the holy texts, the inspiration. So I think when people look at it that way and they really stop to consider, okay, yeah, you're right. It's been going on forever. The other thing that's helped too is that in 2016, Pope Francis, the late Pope Francis, issued a papal bull, which is kind of like a newsletter to his pastors globally. And he said he wanted them to welcome psychics and healers because they were doing the work of the Holy Spirit. And so there are many, many Catholic churches and other Christian churches of all denominations and synagogues that give a copy of my angelic attendants to every family that comes in to plan a funeral, or every family that has a loved one at the end of their lives, and many hospice agencies as well and organizations. So it's becoming more and more part of the zeitgeist.
Do you feel that angels are maybe more universally, as far as talking to loving higher beings, that angels are more universally accepted? Which I kind of laugh because I remember I had sort of this thing where I was like, I'm not going to be a cheesy angel person. And I would talk to other ascended masters and spirit guides. But at first, I was sort of rejecting angels until my dark night of the soul. And then I was like, okay, I need you angels, please come in. But I think as a whole, I'm thinking that across maybe different traditions, people are open to angels, maybe more than, say, ascended masters. Or what are your thoughts on that?
Angels are more universally accepted throughout all of the different religions and cultures. Every culture and every doctrine has them, has angels. And angels are just seen as our constant companions. That's the first thing I learned about as a little Catholic girl. I mean, I think the Catholics do a great job of getting us prepared for the spirit world with angels and saints, and you're praying to the Holy Spirit and your guardian angel. In my mid 60s now, I can recite the prayer I said every night as a child, my guardian angel prayer. It's just burned into my memory. And the other thing that's really helping, I think, people open up to this is there's now university based research that shows that 90% of people see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets and angels and other ascended masters as they're transitioning at the end of their lives. 90%. So when you get the science catching up to the woo woo's been around for forever. I think that that really helps people say, well, maybe there is more to the story than what I thought.
I think about the people who've worked in hospice and I've talked with them and just like, well, of course, that the person who's crossing over for several days beforehand, they start talking with their parents. They start
Right.
talking with their aunts and their uncles and grandparents. And it's a common thing. Like, I can't imagine a hospice person going, nope, there are no spirits visiting here. It's just part of the understanding of what is happening. And then when I talk with older people, people in their 70s and 80s who have been with friends and loved ones who've crossed over, they also have seen that they're talking with their loved ones and maybe even feeling the person's loved ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about religions, I have plenty of clients who are still Catholic. I say still because I have many clients who grew up in a certain denomination, but they've left the church.
Mm-hmm.
But I have many Catholic people, and I was delighted to find out how this is a generalization, but how woo woo Catholicism is.
Yeah.
And how I will say something, and they'll be like, absolutely, yes, saints, angels, loved ones who've crossed over. And so it's been a delight working with a lot of the Catholic clients I have. Go
I'm a
ahead.
cafeteria Catholic.
What does that mean?
That means I take what
Oh,
makes sense to me and I leave what doesn't.
perfect.
So, yeah.
I love that. So I have a question for you. I loved when I have heard you say that you don't walk around getting information from people. You are able to, what I say, go into psychic space when you're available for it and not when you're not available for it. That is people's personal information, and only when you have permission, you receive it. And I love, love, love that. Will you expound upon it?
Sure. And I teach this too. I turn my abilities on and off at will. It takes a nanosecond.
Mhm.
And especially with the medical stuff, I never scan anybody. Again, I'm like a human MRI. I'm not going to look inside somebody's body without their permission. That's kind of like if I run into somebody that has pneumonia, they're going to tell me what they want me to know, but I'm not looking at their chest x ray without their permission. And I think in this space, ethics are so important
Yes.
because it's a respect thing. And when the person thinks about, oh, psychics are shady or whatever. Well, some of them are. I mean, you got shady people in every industry, but that's a low vibration. We're working in the super high vibrations, the three of us, and ethics are super important with that. So whether I'm scanning somebody from a medical standpoint and an energy healing standpoint, or whether I'm talking to their deceased loved ones or anything along those lines, it's always when I turn my abilities on and off. People will say, well, who's around me? And I'll say, there's thousands of spirits around you. Who do you want to talk to? We'll just bring them in. So I have a normal life. I cook dinner, I fold laundry, I go for walks, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of, I don't even know if these still exist, but there used to be those like star celebrity magazines when you're at the grocery store and they're right there. And then you'd open it and they'd be like, look, celebrities are just like us. And they'll be doing this, like psychics are just like us. You're buying your groceries, you're eating your
Yeah.
meal.
Right.
I wanted to talk more about the medical mediumship because, yeah, I find this really fascinating. And I'm so interested that this part of, the wave of the future? Is the medical industry gonna open up more in this direction? I find it really exciting and also collaboration. Like I had last season on the podcast, there was a medical medium, Miriam Farish, and she partners with a nurse, Nurse Meg, and they work together. And I was like, this is so cool. Like someone from the traditional medicine space and someone from the woo space, and they're collaborating and how we could like integrate these things as a bridge moving forward. And yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are about medical mediumship as far as maybe where it is right now and maybe like what are some of the possibilities or where could it go? Being that you said you've invented medical devices and so forth. So
Right. Right. Well, I think it's absolutely becoming more commonplace. There are many medical centers, university medical centers in particular, that have people that do Reiki, which is energy healing, on staff. And even, gosh, probably 25 plus years ago, my mother had shoulder surgery and she was in Ohio State University Hospital and she had somebody doing Reiki on her. I think it must have been more than 30 years ago because it was before I started doing woo woo, before I started learning it. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? That, I mean, that's one of the biggest universities in the country, let alone the world.
hmm.
And she had somebody doing energy healing. I believe that the energy healing is part of the healing equation. Got the Eastern medicine, the Western medicine, the homeopathic, the energy, all of it. It's all part of the healing equation. And when we talk about energy medicine, it's been done for a really long time. We just haven't thought about it. Consider an EEG and EKGs. Well, we all know what that is. Some of us have had them done on us. What are they doing? They're measuring the energy field outside of the brain, outside of the heart, outside of the body. And there's more and more technology being developed that is able to tune into that energy field and help diagnose things. I have many, many medical providers, surgeons, doctors of all specialties, scientists, other medical providers, along with people from all walks of life that have taken my training. And they incorporate my methodologies into their normal practices.
Wow.
They're all using their intuition anyway, and they know that, all right, there's more to the story because they may have a patient come in that looks fine on paper and all their blood tests are fine and their EKG is fine and all of that. But they just have a inkling that there's more to the equation and they follow their intuition and they're right. Every physician has that. I had in my training last year, I had a gal who's a research scientist at Harvard doing breast cancer research with high doses of vitamin C. And we had her up on the stage during our practice session, and we brought in the spirit of Linus Pauling, who was the one that cured polio with vitamin C. And the whole class, we were witness to this conversation that she was having with Linus Pauling from heaven. And he was giving her direction on what to research and, what looked good and what she could do to enhance the outcomes from her for her patients from her studies. So Yes, it's all integrating, it's all part of the healing equation. And the other thing that's important to remember is that nobody ever heals anybody else, ever. No doctor, no medical provider, no healer, no shaman, nobody. You think about we go to the hospital with a big cut on our leg, we get stitches. Well, the doctor that sews up our cut doesn't make our skin grow back. We make our own skin grow back. And that's how all this works. So we're all helping the person heal themselves.
I am so curious about how you go about medical intuition. I also am a medical intuitive, and I have been guided throughout my life in many areas to not read books, to not listen to podcasts, which is funny that I'm on this podcast, and to learn directly from my guides or specific guides that come in for certain things. I love that people take courses and programs and weekend long things and books. I love it. There are many times I'm like, I want to do that. And then my body shuts down. It's like,
Mhm.
nope, I'm a no to that. And I love that you're offering this program. Part of it is like, I want to take your program to just add to what I already know. I've been doing this for a
Right.
long time, but to add to what I know. Personally, I have a guide who I've been working with for years. She comes in and she teaches. She's the one who took my medical intuition to the next level. My main spirit guide started, and then she came in and took over my training.
Right.
And every now and then she'll say, okay, we're going to level up to the next thing. So I'm curious if you have a specific guide who works with you. Two questions: a specific guide who works with you on your medical intuition, and who you learned medical intuition from originally.
Well, Barbara Brennan's graduate, who's my mentor, taught me some of the stuff she got at Barbara Brennan and then
Mhm.
mixed it with her own experiences. And that's what I do. Certainly, we all learn things from books and classes and things like that. And then it all goes into kind of like our own personal goulash, if you
Yes.
will, of how
Yes.
we do it. And so I'm very adamant about we're going to figure out what's the best way for you to do this. You don't need to twirl 3 times, meditate for an hour, jump on your left foot, and raise your right hand to do this. If you want to do that, that's fine, but it's not necessary. Let's figure out what's going to be a process for you. And it's not so much about technique, it's about a transfer of energy at a super high level. That's 90% of what I do. It's a transfer of energy from me to my students, and they sit in that high vibe for an extended period of time. And then my training has practice groups that come with it that are free for life.
Oh,
And
wow.
right now we have 9 a week on different
Hmm.
days in different time zones because we got people from 14 countries around the world so far who've taken my class. And that's where the magic really sets in. Because you can go to a training, you can read a book, you can watch a video, but until you're doing it, it doesn't really set in. It's kind of like remember when you were learning to drive a car. We watched a video, we read the book from the DMV, we rode in the car with many people driving, but until we were behind that wheel and done it, and we had done it several times, we didn't really feel comfortable driving. And this is the same thing. It's all developing that muscle.
Mhm.
So I tell people it's 10% technique, 90% transfer of energy. So that's the first answer. The second answer is it's just spirit. It's God, the universe, the angels, the all of them working through me. Holy Spirit, if you want to call it that, working through me and with me to help that person heal themselves.
That's fantastic that you have those sessions for people to practice. Because I do feel like when I went to hypnotherapy school, we learned all these techniques and we would practice them when we learned them. But it was really the 6 month internship I did after where I got the confidence to keep applying those skills. And the people that didn't do the 6 month internship, a lot of them never felt confident enough and didn't start their practice. And those of us that got a lot of practice over and over again, developed the ability or felt more confident in our ability. So that's amazing. I don't think that's very common that people could
It's
have
not.
something like that. Yeah.
All my trainings, even the ones that are self-paced online, they all have practice groups and they're all facilitated by graduates of my big angelic
Mm.
attendant training class. Because what I've found over the years is when we get validation for the information we're getting, then we learn to trust it. The more we trust it, then it just becomes second nature. And so I've been very adamant about, I think the practice groups are the most important part.
Hmm.
What do you say to people who are doubting the information? I would say that's one of the biggest questions I get from my students and people who attend my events. Well, I'm doubting myself. So I'm curious the wording. I have various things I say, but what do you say?
Well, I have a technique I teach to get their vibration level raised back up. When they're doubting, they're in a low vibration. They're on the what I call the I feel crappy channels of the vibration. You think about like a radio or satellite dish TV, satellite TV, and you're gonna turn the channel to whatever you want to watch. Well, that programming's being broadcast and you're on the I feel crappy channels. You're not tuned in to what spirit's telling you. And that's where the practice groups come in really handy because it's over time. It's like you can throw a football. Anybody can throw a football, but you're not going to be Tom Brady unless you throw it a lot and practice it. And then the more you do it, then the more confident you feel. And then it just becomes second nature. I probably, just from a medical standpoint, I probably scan about 3,000 people a year. So for me, it's just instant. If you listen to one of my call-in shows, it's every Thursday night at 8 Eastern, and I'm bebopping all over the world. I'm scanning this person's cat. I'm looking at somebody else's knee. We're talking to somebody else's dead grandmother. We're telling how close to death somebody is. I mean, whatever. And it's very fast for me, but I've done it tens of thousands of times. And anybody that's done it that many times will be, instant. It's instant. It's like breathing for me. It's just, you know, it's like driving a car. You don't get in the car and think, okay, I need to put my foot on the brake. I need to put my seatbelt on. I need to push the button or turn the key. You just do it. It's just second nature.
But surely, like, I could throw the football all day long, every day, and I'll never be a Tom Brady, right? Like, I mean, so there must be, just like anything else, some people are going to be that extra, like Tom Brady level, top tier, right? And other people might just learn to throw pretty accurately. Would you say that's similar with psychic abilities? Everybody can develop their psychic abilities to a certain extent, but maybe some people are naturally going to be more gifted.
I found that everybody's about the same. We all come in with the ability. We're all using our intuition, whether we know it or not. We all have had experiences where we think of somebody and they either call us or they text us or we run into them or they email us and we say, oh my gosh, I was just thinking of you this morning. And here you are. What a coincidence. No coincidence there. We're all healers. We've all either experienced or seen somebody with a child perhaps who falls down and skins their knee. And then they go on their mother's lap and the mother kisses the boo boo and sends them off to play. And that's healing. We all do it. And with Tom Brady, he was in the last round of the draft. I mean, the guy was not a superstar, even when he started playing pro football. Same with Michael Jordan. He was not picked up early in the professional, and they will tell you that it was laying those neural pathways, those skill sets. Interestingly enough, I had Dr. Daniel Amen on the show, and he's a psychiatrist, double board certified, and he's scanned more brains on a SPECT scan to see how the brain lights up with different activities. And I wanted him to scan my brain to see if there was a portion of my brain that lit up. So I went to one of his clinics and they did a kind of like a CT scan with contrast. And then I had him on the show to reveal the results. And he said it was the frontal lobe, something, something. And he said, yeah, that mine was very busy. And he said that was something that I developed.
Hmm.
It's not a normal thing that people come in with. And he said he can tell in different parts of the brain when somebody's developed those neural pathways. So it's been my experience with hundreds of students from all over the world that everybody has the ability, and it's just a matter of developing and enhancing it. As a matter of fact, in my training, in the first 2 hours, people are doing this and it blows their minds. People
Wow.
that come in with no skills and they go, oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so I am curious. You said you've owned 9 businesses and
Yes.
you're an inventor and an entrepreneur. Is all of that complete and now you're full on psychic medium, or do you still dabble in some of those areas?
I'm doing the woo woo
Full
full
on.
time now. I sold my surgical device manufacturing company in 2015. And I thought, okay, now what? And that's when that whole thing unfolded with Clement showing up and,
Mhm.
and writing the book and all of that. It's unfolded in ways I could never have imagined. And people who've known me for a long time, especially business colleagues, will say, well, what are your goals with this? I'll say, I don't know. I don't have any. They'll say, well, what do you mean you don't have any? Don't you have a business plan? And I'll say, no. And they'll say, well, how do you come up with all this stuff? I'll say, I'm led. I'll get an idea. You can't take the entrepreneur and the inventor out of the person. So certainly Pope Clement said all that stuff that you've done has prepared you for this.
Mhm.
And it's given me the wherewithal to help things unfold. But there's no way I could have envisioned doing this, let alone having it get to the point where it is now.
Do you think, because I do past life regression and I know you do past life scan and I do soul plan reading, and do you think that your soul came in with that plan and even or the timing of like, okay, we're going to do this other business stuff first and get all this skills, and then at this point in life, that's when we're going to jump into the woo, or what are your thoughts about your soul's plan?
Yeah, I think we all come in kind of with a basic blueprint. You're the queen of that. You know way more about that than I do. And I think that it's a very basic script. And then our free will comes in and we choose how it happens. I did get regressed for a past life.
Hmm.
I had Simon Bowen on the show, and he's a buddy of mine from England. And I thought, well, it'd be fun to just do it on the show because I'd never done it before. And I was frankly a little afraid of it. I thought, well, is he going to hijack my brain or what's going to happen? And I wanted to know, where did this interest in healing stuff originate? And what we came up with was it was on a star, not a planet, on a star 500 billion light years away. And I watched this whole infusion of energy come into me. And that's where the healing interest and the healing skill sets really took hold. And then over many lifetimes, I've dabbled in different areas of healing. I don't think I was burned at the stake. I haven't found that to be the case, but certainly that's where my main interest was and what brought me into this woo woo space. And then Pope Clement showed up and said, you need to teach the world what's happening when somebody's dying. And I thought, that's not normal dinner conversation. Pull people in. It's like, hey, do you want to know what happens when somebody dies? But everybody's interested in health and healing.
Mhm.
And so my goal at the beginning was I thought, well, I'll get them interested maybe in the health and healing thing. And oh, while they're on my website, they can see this other stuff. So it's taken directions that there's no way I could have anticipated. And it's been such a fun adventure. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, no regrets. It's just been a blast and continues to be.
That's how I feel too. I sometimes say that too. People are like, when you talk like that, if I get hit by a bus, but I really feel like I want to be here and there's so much more. And I feel pretty fulfilled from up to this point.
Right.
When you're talking about, what happens after we die, and I do think I can't speak for all Western culture, but I feel in the American culture, that is something that has been sort of taboo or people have avoided, or it's not been, like you said, dinner conversation. But it seems like people are opening up to that more. You have these like death doula training. And so I think that there might be a shift there. What have you seen? And then I also love to hear more about that process as far as what do you call it? The 12 phases?
12 phases of
Yeah.
transition.
Can you talk about that?
I agree with you. I think that there's a shift in that that's happening. I think in the Western world, we're afraid. We don't know if we're going to fly or we're going to fry because we've all been inundated with, you better do this the way I tell you to do it, or you're going to burn in hell. Well, here to tell you, everybody goes to heaven. There was a movie out in the 1980s that said all dogs go to heaven. Well, all people go to heaven too. And we're all surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets as we're transitioning. And as I mentioned, university based research corroborates that now and validates it. So, once, especially in this day and age, it seems like if there's some research that's showing that this is true, people are more likely to buy it instead of if they had, especially if they haven't been around somebody who was dying. Now, when my mother was dying, she wasn't really verbal. We got up there for the last about 24 hours of her life. We drove 10 hours overnight because I couldn't get a flight that would get me there soon enough. And God bless my husband. He goes, let's just drive it. And I said, through the night? And he said, yeah, we'll just take turns. Made a bed for our son Jonathan in the back of the car. He was in about the fifth grade then, and he slept, and it worked great. So she wasn't really talking to spirits, but it was interesting what I was seeing. And that was really my baptism into what's happening and how it works. I was raised in Catholic school to think or to believe that the soul or the spirit is someplace in the chest area. That's not what I perceive. What I perceive is that the spirit or the soul, I use them interchangeably. I use spirit more than soul because soul has a religious connotation to me. So, spirit is the main part of us, and the body is inside the spirit. And then it's all enclosed in what I call the energy field membrane. Imagine a big plastic bag of really thin saran wrap, thinness of plastic. So when the spirit and the body are starting to separate when somebody's dying, the spirit exits out through the top of the head and it holds on kind of like a cartoon speech bubble where the cartoon character's thoughts or words are on the top of the head. That's phase one. And then phase two is the spirits that are the paternal spirits closest to the person who's dying show up. And the one that shows up first is the maternal spirit, and she runs the show from the spirit world, which really surprised me. My Meemaw, my grandmother, who had died 6 months before my mom was dying, she was there. She was the first one to show up, and I could see her. I was like, okay. I thought maybe God had some death department in heaven, and they'd say, okay, Susie Lou is dying, in Memphis. Send the angels to help Susie Lou come to heaven. That's not how it works. So the maternal spirit comes in first, runs the show, brings in the other spirits, brings in the angels, brings in the pet spirits. Paternal spirit shows up next. And if my mother was alive, it would be my maternal grandmother who would show up first. If she was still alive, it would be her mother. It's always on the maternal side, maternal line. Paternal, my dad's deceased, my dad's spirit would be there. If he was still alive, it would be my maternal grandfather, again, on the maternal line, which is interesting. And there are many cultures and religions. Think of the Jews. The Jewish religion, if a baby's born of a non-Jewish mother, that baby's not considered to be Jewish, which is why you'll see a lot of Gentile women when they marry into a Jewish family, they'll convert because that child is not considered Jewish if it's not born of a Jewish mother. I think that's got to be ancient in that culture. There's something there with that maternal line. So we think we're done with our kids when they're grown. We're not. We're helping them from the grave. We're helping them from heaven. So that happens. And then phase three, these angels show up. And these are big old angels as I perceive them. Big wings, white gown, bare feet, rope belt. Is that what angels really look like? That's what I was taught they look like in the paintings and the statues. Somebody growing up in an indigenous culture in the middle of the Amazon may see angel energy as just a ball of purple fog. I mean, it's spirit's going to show up to us in a way that makes sense to us so we can identify them. So that happens. And then the different phases are the configuration of the angels and the loved one spirits. There are thousands, tens of thousands of spirits that show up, so many that they look like dots on the horizon. Pet spirits show up, every pet that person's had in their life. Farm animals. The person grew up on a farm. I'll say, did your grandmother grow up on a farm or does she live on a farm now? I'll say, yeah, she grew up on a farm. And I'll say, okay, there's cows and chicks and horses and ducks. And it's hilarious when that happens. A couple of nuances that are really interesting. About phase 5, there are 2 additional angels that show up and they position themselves on either side of the spirit bubble. And when that happened with my mother, I thought, it's going to be interesting. I have no clue what these angels are going to do, but I know they're going to play a role. Well, what I learned was about between 9 and 10, those angels' wings start to move. Those 2 angels on either side of the spirit bubble. And it reminded me of a giant owl. If you've ever seen a documentary or seen an owl in person, their wings are massive and they are silent. And it's almost like you can feel the drag that they create. So these angels' wings moved for hours with this slow rhythmic pace, and I could feel this upward pull. And what happened was they formed a vortex above my mother's head. And it reminded me of driving through the car wash at the end when they turn the dryer on and it's sucking all the water off your car before you drive out. It was an upward pull. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'll bet that's going to help my mom's spirit detach from her body. And sure enough, it did. And you'll hear NDEers talk about going through a vortex or going through a tunnel. That's what they're doing. And so then those angels escorted my mom's spirit to heaven. A couple of interesting points about that. When I was writing Angelic Attendants, I did some research online about, and I put in the search bar, owl wings vortex. Come to find out there's this aeronautical engineering phenomenon called the wingtip vortex. And it's how the air goes over and under the wings of anything that flies, whether it be a jet, a plane, a bird, a bug, a kite, and it causes upward lift. If you do an internet search on wingtip vortex, something every pilot knows about, you will find tens of thousands of pictures and articles and diagrams and engineering drawings on the wingtip vortex. And I thought, all right, the angel's wings were causing this phenomenon. It's an aeronautical engineering thing that helped my mom's spirit detach from her body. I thought that was interesting. Secondly, I always see the spirit go up and to the right, and I didn't know why. And in the old masters paintings of somebody dying, it's always depicted of that person's spirit going up and to the right. So I was giving a talk at Helping Parents Heal, a conference for parents who'd lost a child, and there was a physicist in my audience, professor. And he came up and he goes, I know why the spirit goes up and to the right. And I said, cool, tell me. And he said, think about screwing the lid of a jar. When you want it to go down, you're screwing it clockwise. When you want it to come off, you screw it counterclockwise. You're going to the left. When it's released, you bring it up and to the right. He said that makes perfect sense to me because it's lifting. And always when you're doing that, it's a counterclockwise motion and you're going to go up and to the right. Last point that I found interesting. At my mom's funeral, and at every Catholic funeral, there's a prayer called In Paradisum, which in Latin means into paradise. And it talks about how the angels and your loved ones will greet you and lead you into paradise. Every tradition, every religion has a prayer similar to that. Spirits are going to come guide you, even the ancient Egyptians. The spirits are going to guide you into the netherworld or whatever. So I wanted to see, where did that prayer originate? Because I really heard it at my mom's funeral because I thought, I just saw that happen with her. I mean, I'd heard it many times throughout my life, but I really heard it at her funeral. So I learned that it began as a 5th century Gregorian chant. So perhaps it took till the 5th century till somebody was well educated enough that they could read and write down this prayer about what happens when somebody's dying. And certainly back then, those people were men and they were living in monasteries and synagogues. They were the scribes. So I believe people have been able to see these phases of transition since the beginning of time, and maybe it just took that long for somebody to write it down. One last really important point about all this: time doesn't exist in the spirit world. Time's a human creation. So everybody, it's been my experience, everybody goes through the 12 phases of transition, regardless of if they die instantly, like in the case of a homicide or suicide, or whether they die over a prolonged period of time, days, weeks, months, even years.
Wow, there are so many things that you know you've experienced and offerings that you have for people. Can you give us an overview of some of the things you offer, including YouTube videos or whatever it might be?
Yeah, anybody that wants a free copy of Angelic Attendants, what really happens as we transition, and it has diagrams in there of how the angels and the loved ones' spirits and all that are positioned. Just go to my website, askjulieryan.com, and you'll see on the homepage, click here for your free digital and audiobook download. And we have it in Spanish too, if people want a
Wow,
Spanish
amazing.
version. Primarily because I think this stuff should be taught in the schools. Everybody's so afraid, and
Mm.
there's nothing to be afraid of. And then on the 12 phases page, if you go to that, there's a chart of all the 12 phases that's a free download. And if somebody has a loved one at the end of their lives, I'll say download that chart, save it on your phone, and then just ask either aloud or in your head, what phase is my mom in? What phase is my whomever in? You'll hear a number in your head, and then you can refer to the chart, and it'll give you a visual of what's going on in the spirit world. And if you see that your loved one is going through phase 6, 7, 8, 9 in kind of rapid succession, bring in the family, bring in the people who want to say goodbye. Families find it very, very helpful because they take time off work, they travel sometimes far distances to be with their loved ones, and they found it to be really helpful. So yes, lots of videos, lots of stuff on my website, free copy of the book if you want it.
Amazing. That's so generous of you. Yeah, I can imagine how helpful that must be for people. So you have this training coming up, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that and how people can find out about that.
Sure. It's adjacent to the Atlanta airport. I rent out a hotel. We rent out a hotel down there. It's on the runway, literally.
Oh, wow.
And right, I mean, they've got this rooftop patio that you can feel like you can reach out and touch the wings of the planes as they're coming to land. And it's soundproof. It's amazing. You can't really hear the planes inside. So we're going to do a training. It's called Angelic Attendant Training. It's my big training. I do it in person once a year. It's October 24th through the 26th, 2025. And you learn how to do the whole buffet of psychicness, communicate with spirit, do the medical, pets, past lives, remote viewing, spirit guides, angels, tell how close to death somebody is, all of that in a weekend. And we have practice groups there. And I have more than 2 dozen graduates that are coming in on their own dime to be there to help volunteer and help the students, which I think speaks volumes that they're willing to do that. And it's just an amazingly life enhancing weekend. And it's a blast. That's the big thing. People say to me, "You always talk about how fun this is." And I said, "I know." And they said, "I didn't know what to expect, but it's exceeded the fun quotient." I mean, it's so much fun when we all get together and do this stuff. There's so much joy because it's such a high vibe. And spirit's all about joy and love.
It's like going to Hogwarts, right? It's the Harry Potter school. We want to have that kind of like magical school with others that are open to
Yeah.
this. I love how broad, how many different things you cover, and that you have a way for people to continue practicing
For
as much as
free,
they
for
want.
life. As
Yeah.
long as I'm alive, as long as I'm doing this stuff. Yeah, it's free. So
And so, even with all of this, do you have something that you're personally excited about for the future? Another book coming out, another program you're going to create, spirits leading you towards something else? Is there anything else that's bubbling up with inside your life?
yes, we have a new book. This will be my eighth coming out the end of the year. And Never in a million years, if you would have told me that I'd be an author, would I have thought that. That's just part of the adventure that's happened. And it's called Angel Messages for Your Life's Journey. It's volume 2, and it's all real life angel stories and stories of miraculous things and loved ones communicating and all of that. And it's all written by graduates of my angelic attendant training,
Mm.
and all of the proceeds of the book go towards funding a scholarship to the training. And we'll have a scholarship recipient. We announced it on my show a couple of weeks ago. She's flying in from Boston, all expenses paid, her airfare, her hotel, all her meals, scholarship to the class. I told her I'm going to get her a tiara and have her wear it. And I just may do that. And so that's coming out. And then I have a program that's self paced training online called Angels and Enlightenment Training, which is communicating with spirit and the 12 phases of transition, how to tell, when somebody's dying, learning all of that. And then we'll be adding a medical intuition, self paced medical intuition and energy healing self paced class there too. So all of those have practice groups too. There's a $10 fee for the practice group that goes to my facilitator be for their time. And they're all graduates of my big class. So yeah, we're trying to give them lots of different,
Hmm.
options and things. I have a phone app that's coming out soon, and
Wow.
people will be able to, we're calling it Spirit Chat, and
Love
people will be
that.
able to submit a video online or on the app of a question, and then I'll answer all of them in a video back. So that's kind of fun. We have from free, they can call into my show, they can submit a question online. I answer all that stuff free. Do a monthly live where it's $25. People come and it's kind of like a pajama party, and I give away free sessions and books and classes and stuff like that and answer people's questions. And then I have 5 graduates doing client sessions with me now, just because there are not enough hours in the day and
Hmm.
people can get in much sooner to see them, and it's at a much reduced rate. So I'm going from free to, you know, a fee, and
Something
just
for
trying to get
everyone.
as many people covered as we can.
I just really, really appreciate you and everything that you're doing, and also your message of, I think that there's so many people, I always hear this, people are like, oh, I want to talk to my spirit guides. I don't think I can, or just this idea that everyone can really develop that connection and that they can keep practicing until it feels really comfortable. And so I love that. And I was just curious before we close out, if since we were talking about angelic messages, if there was any that you wanted to share that were either just a particularly beautiful message that you've got from the angels, or maybe something that was surprising, or I don't know if there's an angel message that you wanted to share with people.
What I just heard in my head was that everybody's already talking to their angels and their spirits. They just don't realize it. And the key is really getting that validation. And so, what I'm hearing is when you get a thought that comes in your head, even if it seems random, follow it, act on it. And they're all communicating with us all the time, our spirits are. And oftentimes, the best way to communicate with spirit before you really develop your skills is to ask for help and guidance before you go to sleep at night. And you'll get informational downloads in your dreams. And that's because what I've experienced is we all go back to the factory preset vibration level of spirit every night when we sleep, and our brains can rest. And so we're back on that spirit channel. And during the day, we're busy and sometimes we're stressed, and we can be on the I feel crappy channels. And spirit's communicating with us, but we're not receiving the guidance. So if you've got something that's troubling you, just before you go to sleep at night, say, hey, angels, hey, Aunt Dorothy, whoever, it doesn't matter. Can you help me figure this out? Or if you've lost a loved one and you feel like you're not getting any signs or any information from them, just ask them to come visit you in your dreams. And that's a really good way to start the process of communicating with spirit. And if it doesn't happen the first night, that's all right. Just keep doing it. It'll happen.
Beautiful. That's so encouraging. I so appreciate your time. It was such a pleasure. I love all of your stories. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me. What a delight to be with both of you. And Diana, especially you, girl, to get to see you again. I loved having you on my show. Everybody, check out Ask Julie Ryan and look up Tianna. We had a great conversation. And Nicole, we need to have you on.
I would love to be on. It's been so lovely to meet you and hear your stories, and it would be great to be on your show. Thank you.
Okay, we'll make that happen.
Awesome. Oh, I can't wait for that to see that episode. Yeah, and we'll put links for you and your website and for that episode and for your training and all of that. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Thank you.